Okay, I've had a lot of people ask me about what's going on with the storm, so I figured it would just be easier to make a video instead of writing all these questions. So here we go, essentially. I'll just run through a couple of quick things. First of all, this is the current radar of the country, and you can see that we just have a huge storm system right out over the center of the country. A couple of things to notice. First of all, an expansive snowpack, snow coming down all the way from Kansas to Ohio right now. That will continue to spread east as the night goes on. And secondly, notice where it's raining down here. You have an extremely strong tap to the Gulf of Mexico. You see these thunderstorms indicated by the oranges and yellows here down in Louisiana, Mississippi, parts of Tennessee. This is streaming up from the Gulf of Mexico, and that's injecting a ton of moisture straight into the cold air. And that's why, if you can see, there's these very dark blues over southern Illinois and southern Indiana. I'll zoom in on it. And these areas are the places where you really have to worry about 2-3 inch an hour bands right now. And those, of course, will be going east overnight. So this is the current radar. So we can get to load here. Here, lots of problems being caused in these areas. Snow piling up extremely fast. The pink is also going to be a very big problem. We'll get to that in a moment. That's freezing rain causing significant ice problems. Much of northeast Arkansas, who earlier today received a lot of ice, is without power right now. So that just shows you what's going on. So now let's bring up the watches and warnings here. This map right here is from the National Weather Service. It's the current map telling you where, and everywhere you see pink is winter storm warning. So you can see the winter storm warnings right now stretch over a vast area. We're talking from Maine to Kansas. In fact, 24 states right now are under a winter storm warning. At least part of 24 states. Some of these like Michigan and Virginia, only a couple of counties. But this just shows you how expansive this system is right now. So, the forecast, that's what you want to get to here. Here, let's take the NAM model run. This is a good model to use when you're inside of 24 hours away from the storm. And this is the latest run. It went through late this afternoon. This is not exactly what's going to happen, but I think it's got a pretty good handle on the situation right now. So I'm just going to run through the frames here and point out a couple of things. So here we are. This is about, let's see, 1 a.m. in the morning right here. And so we're going to zoom it forward in time, 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. And now you see by sunrise tomorrow morning, you have this extremely large area of heavy precipitation now moving into New England from the west. All of Pennsylvania has received at least a half inch of precipitation. That's QPF, not snowfall amounts. I'll get to why that number is important in a second. Over all of Pennsylvania, now moving into New York. Now, the first thing you want to notice here when you're moving into the area is this line right here. You see this blue line? It starts out of the Atlantic Ocean, runs just south of Nantucket, and then pretty much runs straight through Pennsylvania. That line indicates where it is either too warm or too cold to make snow up in the atmosphere, or generally at about that point. So essentially, if you're north of that line, snow is going to be falling. If you're south of it, rain is going to be falling. But now take a look at this other line over here. This other darker blue line runs up here in the Gulf of Maine and then cuts down along the coast all the way down to about Philadelphia, right down to Baltimore, Washington, D.C. And notice how far south this line is from the other line. The line indicates whether it's going to be able to snow up at 850 millibars up in the atmosphere. And what this tells you, and this is very concerning, is that there is going to be a significant ice storm in these areas over here, in much of Pennsylvania, particularly around the Allentown area along Route 78, into western New Jersey, and possibly even into New York City. In these areas, icing could be a very big issue. You see, it remains that way as you head through time. Even more heavy precipitation. Now you see some ice now moving into southern Connecticut now. This is by late morning tomorrow. So this is very heavy precipitation falling, and at least for a time period, it's warmer up in the atmosphere than it is in the ground. So there will be sleet and a bigger problem, freezing rain throughout much of the morning as this system rolls through the Northeast, first Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and eventually into southern New England. I don't think the icing is going to be as bad as you get into southeastern New England, southern Rhode Island, southern Massachusetts. There will still be some ice, but it won't be the crippling event that it could be for parts of eastern Pennsylvania or along Interstate 70. I'd be getting very concerned if I was back in this area over here. So in any case, let's run it through now. Now that's one thing. The other thing I want to get to, that I want to point out here, is, and this shows you sort of what's going on, why this icing is a concern. This is an image right here at around, again, 10 a.m. Go back to this one. You notice a couple of things. You have two areas of low pressure here. One, 1,008 millibars back centered over and just southwest of Pittsburgh out over here. And then a second one, new low is formed south of Long Island. That's what's happening here. This is an original low is coming up from southwest to northeast towards Pittsburgh, and it's dying out as it comes in that direction. And then it's reforming off Atlantic City and then moving forward. So we'll go backwards in time a shot here. You can see there's no low. This is 3 hours earlier now, around 7 a.m. There's no low south of New England yet in this frame. But it may be hard to see with the precipitation with all the green on the map. But there's another low back over here toward Ohio and West Virginia, moving toward the Ohio-West Virginia border, moving to the northeast. And you can see as you move it forward, it starts to die out. There's two lows at this frame, 3 hours later around 10 a.m., and then by 1 p.m., it's completely transferred to a new low, 1,004 millibars, just south of Nantucket. So, when you have a system like this, when the low is transferring back 6 hours earlier, where the main low, is back in Ohio and northeastern Pennsylvania, well, we know lows rotate counterclockwise. So what happens is, in a counterclockwise direction, the flow around the low is like this. It moves in this direction. So it's southwest to northeast over eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey and New York City. So what's going to happen is you end up blasting these areas with warm air up in the atmosphere, but not at the surface because the low is dying. And many of these areas at the surface never get above freezing in northeast Pennsylvania and northern New Jersey and even in the New York City metropolitan area, just southern New York, Hudson Valley, never get above freezing because the new low takes over and then switches the wind direction from the northeast. So you never get a warm air to penetrate at the ground level, particularly when you have a snowpack on the ground like we have today. So it just becomes a very, very, very big ice problem for these areas. So let's go to those maps right now. This map right here is for southern Connecticut, New York City, Long Island. You see, this is from Upton, the National Weather Service out of New York. This area of dark blue indicates a 1/4 of an inch of ice or more, and that's very, very significant, because anybody you see in this blue, this darkest shade of blue, that is enough ice to add 500 pounds to each string of power line you see between the poles. So it can bring those down and cause power outages. Ice storms are just brutal. And there's another map here, you can go a little further west, where I think it's going to be at least this severe. You see only the dark blue to Allentown, Pennsylvania, northwest New Jersey. I think this could be even more expansive. This may be underdone, the ice in parts of eastern Pennsylvania and northern New Jersey on this map here. It's hard to tell for sure because ice is extremely difficult to predict because you're trying to predict the precipitation, the temperature up in the atmosphere and near the ground. But this, nevertheless, could be a very, very significant icing event after a couple of inches of snowfalls over these areas. So now, if you want to look for snowfall totals in southern New England, we'll go to those. Let's see what I put that. There it is. This is the general map they released. I think it's a pretty good one, if you want to go up to southern New England, where it's more of a snow and to rainstorm on the south coast. There will be some ice, I think, in southern Rhode Island, southeastern Massachusetts, but it's not going to be as bad as you're going to see towards southwest Connecticut, the New York City metropolitan area, northwest New Jersey, and northeast Pennsylvania. And really it extends over even east of that in Pennsylvania. I didn't include it because the population is smaller back over in that area, but those areas will see ice as well. So you look at here their map here, I think it's a generally good call. I think somebody in northwest Rhode Island might squeeze out a foot of snow just because there's plenty of precipitation to do it, and if they stay below freezing throughout the storm, which I think they might, you could see a foot. You could see a foot there. Obviously, 10 to 14 inch amounts you had north of the Mass Pike easily should be done. There's plenty of precipitation to accomplish that, and they're going to have no problems with mixing up there. So that's what it currently looks like right now. Again, this is a storm where very, very small shifts in temperature or track could still make a difference. So the south coast of Rhode Island, southern Massachusetts, could very easily see 6, 7, 8 inches of snow before they turn over. They could also very easily see 3 inches before it turns over. It's still possible, but I think generally this is the right call. So whatever you see here, add maybe 1/10 of an inch of ice to southern Rhode Island, southeastern Massachusetts, not including the Cape, because I think you're going to see a little bit of an ice problem there, and I think it briefly changes over to plain rain sometime in tomorrow afternoon over these areas over here, but not before most of the good precipitation has gone through. So the majority of the event, especially north of, let's say, this line, anywhere really from this dark blue shading and especially up into the pinks, the majority of this system, if not all of the system, especially up here, is going to come with temperatures below 32 degrees. So you may get some freezing rain and sleet down here. That may knock down some of the total accumulations, but overall, it's just a very, very, very messy situation. Comes in a little before sunrise, does not end until sunset probably, at least the heaviest precipitation may end by mid-afternoon, but that's what it looks like for the southeastern New England area, but the bigger story to watch overall is the potential ice storm over northeast Pennsylvania and northwest New Jersey, because that could knock those people out of power for days if it verifies.